The crack of a whip split the humid air of Redemption Springs, Texas, as Emma Marshall clutched her 6-month-old daughter tighter to her chest, trying desperately to shield the infant from the scorching June sun of 1875. The wooden auction platform beneath her feet felt like it might give way any moment, or perhaps that was just her trembling legs threatening to collapse as the auctioneer's voice boomed across the town square. Next up, we have a fine young woman and her babe, healthy teeth, strong back. Could serve as a housekeeper, cook, or nanny. Starting bid at $20 for the pair. Emma's eyes stung with unshed tears as she scanned the crowd of men-weathered ranchers, shopkeepers, and drifters, their gazes assessing her worth like she was livestock. Just 3 weeks ago, she had been a respectable widow traveling west with her infant daughter, Hannah. Now, after being robbed of everything by bandits who'd left her stranded, she faced the unthinkable. Being sold to the highest bidder to pay off the debt she'd accumulated at the town's only hotel while waiting for help that never came. Do I hear $25? $25 for this fine specimen and her young'un, the auctioneer, a greasy-haired man with tobacco-stained teeth, circled around her like a vulture. A burly man with a thick beard raised his hand. 25, 30. Called another, a thin man with cold eyes that made Emma's skin crawl. Hannah began to fuss, sensing her mother's distress. Emma bounced her gently, whispering soothing words, though she felt anything but calm. The bidding continued, climbing steadily as men assessed her with calculating stares. She wasn't naive, she knew what some of them wanted, and it wasn't just household help. $45, do I hear 50? The auctioneer's voice cut through her thoughts. The thin man with cold eyes nodded. 50? Emma's heart sank. She had heard whispers about this man, Silas Winters, who owned a saloon on the edge of town and was known for his cruelty toward women. $50 going once, going twice. The thundering of hooves interrupted the auctioneer as a cloud of dust appeared at the end of the street. A rider approached at breakneck speed, the powerful chestnut stallion beneath him kicking up dirt and gravel. The crowd parted as man and beast skidded to a halt at the edge of the auction grounds. The newcomer dismounted in one fluid motion, his face partially obscured by the wide brim of his Stetson. He was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in worn denim, a faded blue shirt, and a leather vest. A gun belt sat low on his hips, though he made no move toward the weapon. "What's the meaning of this?" he demanded, his deep voice carrying across the suddenly silent crowd. He pushed back his hat, revealing a ruggedly handsome face with piercing blue eyes and several days' worth of stubble. The auctioneer cleared his throat nervously. "Just settling a debt, mister." "This woman owes money to $100, the stranger announced, striding toward the platform. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The auctioneer's eyes widened. $100. We have $100 from the gentleman in the blue shirt, going once, going twice. Sold." Emma stood frozen as the tall stranger approached, pulling a leather pouch from his vest. He counted out bills, handed them to the auctioneer, then turned to her. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, weathered by sun and wind. "Madam," he said quietly, offering his hand to help her down from the platform. "Name's Knox Mackenzie. Let's get you and your little one out of this heat." With Hannah clutched to her chest and no other options, Emma placed her trembling hand in his and allowed him to lead her away from the auction block. The crowd parted before them, some men grumbling in disappointment, others watching with curious eyes. "My things," Emma whispered. "At the hotel, we'll get them," Knox assured her, his voice gentle but firm. "Right now, let's just put some distance between you and that crowd." He led her to his horse, a magnificent chestnut with intelligent eyes. "Can you ride?" he asked. Emma nodded, still clutching Hannah protectively. "I'll help you up, then hand you the baby," Knox said, interlacing his fingers to create a step for her. With practiced ease born from years on her father's farm, Emma mounted the horse, settling herself side-saddle. Knox carefully handed Hannah up to her, then untied the reins from the hitching post and led the horse down the street toward the hotel. Why? Emma finally found her voice. Why would you spend $100 on strangers? Knox glanced back at her, his expression unreadable. No decent man auctions off a woman and her child. I couldn't ride past and do nothing. At the hotel, Knox waited outside while Emma gathered her meager belongings, a small carpet bag containing a change of clothes, a hairbrush, a locket with her parents' pictures, and a few baby items for Hannah. When she emerged, Knox was speaking with an older man who kept glancing at Emma with concern. Knox nodded at whatever the man said, then passed him a few coins. That was Doc Wilson, Knox explained as he helped Emma back onto his horse. Says there's a small cabin about a mile outside town that belonged to his nephew. It's empty now, but sound. We can go there, get you and the little one settled. Mr. Mackenzie, Emma began, her voice trembling slightly, I appreciate your help, but I need to be clear, I won't. That is, I can't. Knox's expression softened. Madam, I bought your freedom, not you. You don't owe me anything. I've got a ranch about 10 miles north of here. Once you're settled, I'll leave you be. The cabin's yours as long as you need it. Relief washed over Emma as Knox mounted behind her, his arms coming around her to take the reins, careful to maintain a respectful distance. They rode in silence through town, past curious onlookers and out onto the dusty road leading north. The cabin was small but sturdy, with a porch that caught the afternoon shade. Inside was a single room with a stone fireplace, a narrow bed, a table with 2 chairs, and a few shelves stocked with basic supplies. A hand pump by the sink promised fresh water. It's not much, Knox said, placing her carpet bag on the table, but it's sound. No one will bother you here. Emma stood in the center of the room, Hannah now sleeping peacefully in her arms. The events of the day had left her drained, yet she felt the first stirrings of hope since the bandits had taken everything. Thank you, Mr. Mackenzie. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. No need, he said, removing his hat and running a hand through his dark hair. I'll bring some supplies tomorrow, food, firewood, things you might need. Doc Wilson says you're welcome to stay as long as necessary. He hesitated at the door. Madam, I don't mean to pry, but might I know your name? Emma, she replied. Emma Marshall, and this is Hannah. Knox nodded, a slight smile softening his features. Get some rest, Mrs. Marshall. Things will look brighter in the morning. As promised, Knox returned the next day with supplies: flour, beans, coffee, sugar, a side of bacon, fresh vegetables from someone's garden, a pail of milk, and clean diapers for Hannah. He fixed the loose shutter on the west window, patched a leak in the roof, and cleared the chimney of bird nests. I can't accept all this, Emma protested as Knox unloaded a second bag of supplies. Consider it a loan, he said simply. When you're back on your feet, you can pay it forward to someone else in need. Over the next few weeks, Knox visited regularly, always bringing something useful: a rocking chair one day, a basket of fresh eggs another. He was unfailingly polite, never staying long, never presuming familiarity. Gradually, Emma shared her story. She'd been married to Thomas Marshall, a kind but sickly man who had died of tuberculosis just months after Hannah's birth. With no family left in Pennsylvania, Emma had decided to head west, answering an advertisement for a teaching position in a town called Promise Creek. The stagecoach had been attacked by bandits 3 weeks ago, leaving her stranded in Redemption Springs with nothing but the clothes on her back and her precious daughter. I'll escort you to Promise Creek when you're ready, Knox offered one evening as they sat on the porch, Hannah sleeping peacefully in a makeshift cradle Knox had fashioned from a sturdy wooden crate. The position is likely filled by now, Emma sighed. And I'm afraid to travel again so soon. Knox nodded, understanding in his eyes. Then stay. Redemption Springs could use a teacher. The miners' children get little schooling. A town that auctions women might not welcome me as a teacher, Emma said bitterly. What happened to you wasn't the town's doing, but the hotel owners, Knox explained. Most folks were disgusted by it. The mayor's already put out word that such practices won't be tolerated. Things are changing here, Mrs. Marshall. People are settling, building. There's a future here for those willing to help shape it. A week later, Emma ventured into town with Knox. The reception was mixed. Some people averted their eyes in shame, others greeted her warmly. The mayor's wife, Mrs. Hollister, approached her outside the general store. Mrs. Marshall, I wanted to apologize for what happened. My husband was away in Austin when that dreadful auction took place. He was furious upon his return. Thank you, Mrs. Hollister, Emma replied, surprised by the woman's sincerity. I understand you were a teacher back east. We've been trying to establish a proper school here for months. Perhaps you might consider the position. By summer's end, Emma had transformed an abandoned storefront into a schoolroom, with Knox's help and materials donated by townsfolk eager to make amends. The first day of school saw 15 children, ages 5 to 14, lined up outside the door, scrubbed clean and clutching worn primers. Knox built a small addition to the cabin for Hannah to have her own room as she grew. He never presumed, never pushed, but Emma noticed how his visits grew longer, how his eyes followed her movements, how he seemed to find reasons to be near. She found herself looking forward to his visits, planning her days around them. When he didn't come for 3 days straight, she worried. When he finally appeared, with a bruised jaw and a cut above his eye from breaking up a saloon fight, she fussed over him in a way that made them both realize something had changed between them. You should be more careful, she scolded gently as she dabbed at the cut with a cloth soaked in witch hazel. Had I known this would be my reward, I might have gotten into fights sooner, Knox teased, his eyes never leaving her face. Emma blushed but didn't move away when his hand came up to catch hers. Emma, he said softly, using her given name for the first time. I find myself thinking about you and Hannah all hours of the day, her heart hammered in her chest. We think about you too. I know it's only been a few months, Knox continued, but I care for you both deeply. I don't expect anything, but I wanted you to know. Emma looked into his eyes, seeing nothing but sincerity and something more a tenderness that made her breath catch. Knox, she whispered, I care for you too. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, but filled with promise. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. Winter came early that year, bringing fierce storms that howled across the plains. Knox worried constantly about Emma and Hannah in the small cabin, despite the improvements he'd made. During a particularly brutal blizzard, he rode through whiteout conditions to check on them, arriving half-frozen but determined. You foolish man, Emma cried, pulling him inside and helping him remove his ice-crusted coat. You could have died out there. Couldn't bear not knowing you were safe, he mumbled through blue-tinged lips. Emma built up the fire, made him strip off his wet clothes and wrapped him in every blanket she owned. She heated broth and held the cup to his lips, her heart constricting at how he'd risked his life for them. That night, with the storm making it impossible for Knox to return to his ranch, they talked for hours. He told her about growing up on a Texas ranch, losing his parents to a fever when he was 16, building his own place from nothing. She shared memories of her brief marriage to Thomas, a kind man she'd respected but never truly loved. I never knew it could feel like this, she admitted softly. With Thomas, it was comfortable, familiar, but with you. With me, Knox prompted, his voice low. With you, I feel alive, Emma whispered. 3 days later, when the storm finally broke, Knox didn't leave. Instead, he asked Emma to marry him, promising to love both her and Hannah as his own for all his days. They were married on Christmas Eve in the town's newly built church, with Hannah babbling happily in Doc Wilson's wife's arms. The entire town turned out, many bringing gifts and well wishes, a stark contrast to Emma's introduction to Redemption Springs just 6 months earlier. I never imagined finding happiness again, Emma confessed that night as they lay together in the bedroom of Knox's ranch house, now their home. Especially not here of all places. Sometimes the worst moments lead us to the best ones, Knox replied, drawing her close. The day I rode into town late and saw you on that auction block was the worst and best day of my life. Spring brought new beginnings. The school flourished under Emma's care, expanding to 30 students. Knox's cattle operation prospered, allowing him to hire more hands and spend more time with his growing family. Hannah took her first steps across the ranch house kitchen, toddling from Emma's arms straight to Knox, who scooped her up with tears in his eyes. Da. Hannah declared, patting his cheeks with her tiny hands. Emma wiped away her own tears, overwhelmed by how completely this man had embraced her daughter as his own. That summer, Emma discovered she was expecting. Knox's joy knew no bounds. He swept her up in his arms, spinning her around the yard until they were both dizzy with laughter. "I love you, Emma Mackenzie," he declared, his hand resting reverently on her still flat stomach. "You and our children are everything to me." In February 1877, Emma gave birth to a son they named James Thomas Mackenzie. Knox paced outside their bedroom during her labor, wearing a path in the floorboards, until Doc Wilson delivered the squalling, healthy boy into his trembling hands. "He's perfect," Knox whispered, placing their son in Emma's arms. "Just like his mama." Hannah, now nearly 2, climbed carefully onto the bed to examine her new brother, declaring him tiny with a giggle that made everyone laugh. As Redemption Springs grew, so did the Mackenzie family. A daughter, Sarah, arrived in 1879, followed by another son, William, in 1882. Knox expanded the ranch house to accommodate their growing brood, adding bedrooms and a proper dining room where they hosted frequent gatherings for friends and neighbors. Emma continued teaching until the demands of motherhood and managing the household became too great. Even then, she tutored children who needed extra help and established a small library in town with books ordered from back east. On warm evenings, the family would gather on the wide porch Knox had built, watching the sunset paint the Texas sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Hannah, growing into a thoughtful young woman with her mother's gentle spirit, would often read to her younger siblings while Knox and Emma sat side by side in matching rocking chairs, their hands intertwined. "You ever think about that day?" Emma asked softly one evening in 1885 as they watched 10-year-old Hannah helping James and Sarah catch fireflies in the yard. "Which day?" Knox asked, though he knew exactly which one she meant. "The auction. The day you rode in late and saved us." Knox squeezed her hand. "Every day." "I thank God I was running behind schedule that morning." Emma leaned her head against his shoulder. "I was so terrified I couldn't see any way out. And now." She smiled, watching their children's laughter as they chased fireflies across the yard, William toddling after his older siblings with determined steps. "Now I can't imagine any other life than this one, with you." As the years passed, Redemption Springs transformed from a rough frontier town into a respectable community. The incident at the auction became a distant memory, though Emma never forgot the terror of that day or the sight of Knox riding in like an avenging angel. In 1895, 20 years after Knox had first brought Emma and Hannah to safety, the town held a celebration honoring Knox and Emma for their contributions to the community. Knox had served as mayor for several terms, helping establish law and order. Emma had not only founded the school but had later organized the town's first library and reading society. At the celebration, held in the town square where the auction platform had once stood, the mayor unveiled a new schoolhouse named in Emma's honor. Hannah, now a teacher herself, stood proudly beside her mother. James, 18 and the spitting image of his father, had just returned from his first year at college in Austin. Sarah, 16, played the piano beautifully for the gathering, while 13-year-old William, already showing Knox's head for business, helped direct younger children in serving refreshments. That evening, as they walked home arm in arm under a canopy of stars, Knox stopped and turned to Emma. 20 years ago today," he said softly, "I saw the most beautiful woman I'd ever laid eyes on standing tall despite impossible circumstances." "You were late," Emma teased, though her eyes shone with emotion. "Best mistake I ever made," Knox replied with a grin. Made me ride like the devil himself was on my heels when I realized what was happening. You saved us, Emma said simply. Knox shook his head. No, my love, you saved me. I was just a lonely rancher with nothing but cattle and land to fill my days. You gave me a family, a purpose beyond myself. Emma reached up to touch his face, now lined with years of laughter and Texas sun. His hair had silvered at the temples, making him even more handsome in her eyes. I love you, Knox Mackenzie, she whispered. And I love you, Emma Mackenzie, he replied, bending to kiss her with the same tenderness as their first kiss 20 years before. Till my dying day and beyond. As they continued their walk home under the vast Texas sky, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From the darkest moment of her life had come the greatest joy, a reminder that sometimes, when all hope seems lost, salvation can arrive in the most unexpected ways, even in the form of a cowboy who rides in late and changes everything. In the years that followed, Knox and Emma watched their children grow and start families of their own. Hannah married a young doctor and settled in town. James returned from college to help Knox manage the ranch, eventually taking over when Knox's joints began to trouble him. Sarah became a teacher like her mother, while William's business acumen led him to open the town's first bank. Through it all, Knox and Emma remained the heart of the family, hosting Sunday dinners where 3 generations gathered around their expanded dining table. And every year on the anniversary of the day they met, Knox would present Emma with a single wildflower, a simple reminder of how beauty could grow from the harshest circumstances. Best $100 I ever spent, Knox would say with a wink. And Emma would smile, remembering the frightened young mother she had once been and the extraordinary life that had unfolded from that desperate day at the auction block, all because a cowboy had ridden in late and changed her fate forever.